easy to work on these. This one seems to work just fine, except when I push the drag up, it's hard to turn, it's hard to reel. 90% of the time, the problem with these reels is the bearings. Is when you pull the drag back, watch this spool slides over. See that? If it's not doing that, it's not functioning properly. A lot of times these spools won't, the free spool won't roll that easily. Pull the drag back to free spool, see that the whole spool moving over? It has to do that or it won't freely spin like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one. Now this one, the handle broke. This nut right here, or this bolt right here, snapped off. So I ordered this part. I'm going to replace that part right there with a new one, and it was only like 10 bucks for a new part. But I'm gonna get to that one later, but let me just show you how easy these are to take apart. I'm gonna use a cordless drill with a small screwdriver tip. Be careful you don't strip the heads on these screws. You wanna take the side plate off that has, I'm gonna strip the screw just like I said not to. The nice thing about these reels is these screws don't go into metal, they go into the graphite body, so they never seize up. All right, once you got those loose, then you can slide that cover plate off, and then pull that plate off, and then to pull the spool out, take this drag loose, take the drag adjustment knob off, once you have that knob off, the spool will just slide right out. And take this part here. I like to lay all the parts out the way they came out, especially if I'm doing one of these for the first time. I like to lay it all out. And if you look inside here, there's a bearing underneath this little gear here. This just pulls out. This bearing right here, I can feel that it's in good shape. So this spool turns freely, but this bearing, I'm going to go ahead and replace it. You can get these bearings, replacement bearing kits online. If you want to make this reel last forever, they make ceramic bearings that will never corrode and never go bad. They're a little more expensive, like 50 bucks for a set. You got 3 bearings inside this spool, and you got 1 bearing right there. To get that bearing out, you just take a screwdriver and just wiggle it, it'll come right out. There's 5 screws here. You take those out. All right, once you get 3 screws out of that, and these 2 little screws down here, and then this plate just lifts off. To take the handle off, you get a screw right there to stop this from turning. Handle comes off, and then this plate comes off. Now you have 5 screws here that need to come out. Get this along a little faster and make this video shorter. Once you get those 5 screws loose, then this side comes right off. Well, that one's not all the way out. Once you get all those out, you can just lift that off, and I'm gonna dump those screws in my hand here, not to lose any. I use a paper towel here so I can see everything better. Now you got 4 tiny screws here to expose the gear underneath. Once you get those little screws out, then you can expose the gear, and the gear will just lift right out of there. There we go. Now there's no bearing in there, just a brass bushing. If your anti-reverse isn't working, it's probably because, oh, look at that, see that one seized up? So what I'm gonna do is kind of free this, got a little spring. I'm gonna free this up. Oh, yeah, it's all caked in there, so I'm gonna clean this up, lube it. It should move back and forth with the spring, like that. This one is seized. So one will help the anti-reverse not to work, but you want both of them working. As I move it, it gets looser. So you could take this screw out and lift the whole assembly out and clean it. But what I'm gonna do is just oil this. A little oil on it. Oil it up a little bit. There she goes, look at that. Nice and free. So these two, when you go to put the gear back in, it's tricky because you have to depress these to get the gear in. These have to slide back in. So the way I do that is I'm going to take this back out and oil it again. I just want to show you how this goes in. I take a little screwdriver and I pull the one ear over, push a little pressure down with my thumb to hold it over. I'll pull that ear back, pull this little ear or dog or tab, tongue thing. So when it sits all the way down in there, you can see. Now to keep that from lifting back off, put this cover back on with the 4 screws and that gear will stay in place. So the cover's on, the gear's in there good. You see we got anti-reverse working good. Alright, the spool bearings, this one doesn't turn real free. It spins, but it's kind of tight. It should just roll. It should just keep rolling. But it slows down pretty quick. If you look at this spool, see how it just keeps rolling? Bearings in this spool are good. See that? It just keeps rolling, 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 but on this one, when I roll it, it slows down and stops pretty quick. All right, so we got this little pin right here. Make sure you don't lose that. Got 2 screws on this side. Now these screws do go into metal, so when I put these back in, I'm going to put some grease on them because these do stainless screws screw into this aluminum spool. These can get stuck. Once you get these screws out, this comes off. And then you've got all of these little screws on this side. So you can pull the shaft out and you see there's a bearing here. This bearing does not feel real loose. It feels like it might be corroded a little bit. It's just barely. You should be able to spin it and it should roll. It doesn't. So there's the problem with this reel. It's this bearing right here. Now, there's another bearing on this side. And one thing, if your spool's not going into free spool, there's a spring. When you push in on this, it should come back out. There's 2 bearings on this side. So you got one on this side. And to get this one off, you got a C-clip right here. You pull that C-clip and the washers off, and then you can get this bearing off. Got 6 screws on this side. Now once you've got these off, these screws, you can lift the ring off and the plastic plate. And there's your drag. There's another bearing right here inside the drag. That one seems fine. Look at that. And then you've got a spring here and another bearing in there. I'm gonna pull that bearing out and make sure that one's fine. When you buy a kit, just go ahead and replace all these. Just put new bearings in it. Oh, that one doesn't even turn. Oh, it's seized. There's the problem between this one and between that one and that one. That's the problem with this reel. I said 90% of the time when you have a problem with this reel, it's the bearings and the salt water. They're stainless steel, but salt water eventually corrodes them. All right, here's my replacement bearing kit. So that one goes in there. It goes right on in there, and then it has a spring on top of it. And then this bearing, there's your drag right here. This is your friction, and that's your drag plate. So I'm gonna clean this up. You don't want to put any oil on your drag plate. Just clean it up. And I'm gonna wipe this disc off here. Make sure there's no oil or grease on it. Now the bearing on your drag plate just pulls right out. Make a liar out of me. There we go. And we're just gonna pop that new bearing in there. Just press it in with my fingers. And then this just goes right back on top of there. And I'm gonna stick this shaft in there just to hold everything in place while I put this cover back on. And then I'll just put all these little screws back on. Alright, so we got the new bearing on there. Put the seat grillet back on. Now we put this back on. This facing the gear out, obviously will only go on one way. And then what I said is, I'm gonna put grease. I'm gonna put some grease on these screws. If I ever, they got a little Loctite on them from the factory, but I'm gonna grease these guys so that they won't get stuck in there. This might be the first time I've taken this apart. I'm gonna line up the holes, tighten these up. All right, now, look at that. She just keeps on rolling. And we make sure that when we depress this bearing here, it's pushing the drag plate against the drag, that when you let go, drag plate comes back off the composite drag there. Everything's functional there, so the spool is good to go. All right, so the way I put this back together, see this has gears all the way down, and the end with no gears goes down into the bearing, down in there. Now I've already put some new grease in there. It looks all dirty, but I oiled it and greased it. This end will slide right in there. But before I do that, I'm gonna make life easy. And this little pin that goes in this hole, put it halfway in and halfway out. And if you look at the cap, it's gotta line up just like that. Now, when I put it in, I'm just gonna shove it right in there. Well, and I'm just gonna shove that right in there. gonna take a little finagling. There she goes. Now what I need to do is line the holes up here with the holes in the housing. So if I push on this, I can lift this up without that pin coming out of place. There, now we're lined up. Now we put this plate back on. I'm gonna clean that off, a little bit dirty there. Give it a little scrub. I'm gonna line this plate up just like that. And I'm gonna put these screws back in. This may be confusing because I got extra parts from the 16 that I'm working on too, but this plastic washer goes on there first. And then this guy. But this thing has a little catch on it that goes over the top of that. There, and then we put these little plastic pieces with the screws or the stops for the drag, so the drag stop the travel. Got one little screw that goes right there. I'm going to tighten these up. I'll speed this up a little bit. You don't have to watch me tighten some screws. Has 2 ears on it. This, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. These ears drop down in there. So I'm going to drop this down in there. So what I want to make sure is this can be 180 degrees out. But that piece has an O-ring on it so that when you screw the drag tension cap on, creates a watertight seal. So you want to make sure that O-ring is there. And then when you put it in, when you increase the drag, it should move up. And when you decrease, it's moved down. But this one's not, so, oh yeah, it's working. When you increase it, it moves up. And when you decrease it, the spring's gonna push it back down. So now we put the spring on. Spring sits there, and then the tensioner cap. All right, and remember, this is proper when you hit free spool. That spool's gonna move. Now, remember it was hard to turn? Needs some new line and it's ready to go. The 16 is the same as we just did the 30. The Tyrnos 32 speed, the 16, the 20, they're all the same. The 2-speed has an extra gear on top of this one and it works just the same.